with assemblies. So just to kind of come back to where we were before, I've done a little bit of cleanup. So I've put the studs and tracks inside the actual stud wall that we're going to be building this assembly for, and I've added some reference planes at 16 inches on center, and I made the track types at 8 feet. This might be a little easier to see in sections, so I basically aligned. I used the align tool, AL. I clicked the reference planes and I selected each stud, and then I locked them, so that way if you stretch it, it'll stretch with the actual reference planes. So I'm just going to turn that back to 16 inches. So the next thing we want to do is we want to put, let's say we're going to be hanging a TV on this wall. You're probably going to need some sort of plywood, probably 3/4 inch. Now when we look at this in our scheduling here, this would probably be under a parts list. You would want to add an extra item here and have it called plywood, and then you'd probably want the dimensions, so when they get these drawings and they send them out to the shop and build them, they'll know the exact size to cut each piece of plywood, or they can get them all pre-cut or whatever is quickest. So what we're going to do is we're going to just go back to level 2. Actually, sorry, we're going to go back to this section, and then we're going to go to new, family, and then we're going to build another generic model. Now you can do this in different ways. You can do it wall based, or you can do it surface, or you can even do just a regular generic model if you want. I personally like the idea of using a face based model, just because it can attach to any face versus just a wall attaches to a wall, etc. So I'm just going to use a face based model. So this is what you get. So this is acting as like the face that you're going to be attaching to. So if we go to our 3D view here, so we're going to be building our plywood on top of here, and then we're going to give it a bunch of dimensions and tools, so that way it can talk to the other stud members. So what we're going to do to start is we're just going to go to our reference level, and we're going to set up some reference planes. So I'm just going to do that quickly here. We're going to want to use equality constraints here, so that way when we stretch it, it'll stretch both ways equally, and if we have to attach to the center dimensions, it won't get confused when we stretch it. So those are the equality constraints. We're going to create a couple more constraints here. We're going to create some parameters. We're going to name one just length. Shoot, we'll call it plate length, and we'll make it an instance because we want it to be flexible, not a reporting parameter, and we'll leave it under dimensions. And then we'll do the same thing over here, except we'll call this one height or width, and then we'll do the same thing, instance parameter. Oops, sorry, we're going to edit that, that's the wrong name. We'll change the width to, call it just plate width to keep it similar. Okay, and then we'll just make this a standard size, so we'll make this 8 feet, and we'll make this one 4 feet. I'm just going to stretch this a little so it's easier to see what we're doing. It doesn't matter what size this background thing is. It's really only just a reference for when you're building things. So we're going to stretch these. We're going to name our reference plane, so I'm just going to do that quickly here. Okay. And then we're going to go into the front view, and we're going to add another reference plane. And we're going to name this parameter. Actually, we want to make sure that when we're doing this, that we're not attaching to the surface, we're attaching to the reference plane here. And the only reason that is it just operates better. So we're just going to call this top, front maybe. Front's probably a better word. Then we'll just change this to just thickness, I guess. We actually want this to be a type parameter because we're going to have like a 1/2 inch type, a 1/4 inch type, 3/4 inch type. So we'll hit OK, and then we'll just make this 0.75 inches. We're just going to change the units real quick too, because we're going to be operating in inches. There's no reason to be feet. Okay, and so we're basically ready to put our shape down. So we're just going to go to create, extrusion. I'm just going to draw a rectangle because that's all it is. So rectangle's good. And then we're going to go back to the front view and just attach this back to here. Lock it. Always make sure that you're locked, so that way it's doing exactly what you need it to do. So we'll pick this. We'll also, actually we're going to go to the type properties up here, and then we're going to create a family or a type, and we're going to call it material, and then we're going to make that a type as well. We're going to change this to a material. So this is pretty important here. If you pick anything else, it won't work. It won't let you select the material from the properties. Then materials and finishes is fine. We'll hit OK, and then we'll just make this. We'll make this plywood. If it'll load, there we go. If they have it, there we go. Just load it in. I'm sure use rendered appearance. Surface pattern. You probably want a surface pattern here. They don't have the wood patterns. If you have wood patterns available, I would select surface patterns. It just makes it easier to see when you're doing your drawings. Then just hit apply. Okay. Okay. And then we're going to attach the material to that. Okay. So if we go into our consisting colors, there you go. Now it's plywood. So now we're going to create a couple of types. So we're going to go here. We're going to create a 1/2 inch plywood. We're just going to create 2 for now, 3/4 inch plywood. You can always create more types once you're in the project. Apply. And then we're going to change the thickness for the 1/2 inch, so it changes automatically. 5. Great. So the next thing we need to do is we need to add shared parameters in. The reason we have to do this is so that way when you're trying to reference this to the parts panel when you're doing your scheduling, they need to be referencing the same thing as your studs. So there's a couple items you want to have here, like our part number. We want to have I guess part number and cut length would be the 2 main ones that you would want to have. So we're going to go to new parameter. We're going to go shared parameter. We're going to select from here. That's fine. Hit yes. We're going to go to browse. I'm going to find one that I've that we've already created. Under steel, I saved it here. Just gonna hit open. So there's our cut length and our part number. I created this TXT file in another tutorial when we created the steel stud and steel track. So if you want to find how to create these, just go to that tutorial. So I'm just gonna hit cut length. I'm gonna hit OK. And I'm gonna hit OK. So same thing, cut length, blah blah blah. Instance parametrics, it's gonna vary, and then that'll be under dimensions. We'll hit OK. So now we want to transfer this plate length to cut length, because we don't want the cut length to be a hard parameter in this family. It just operates better if you have the actual plate length, or you have a separate parameter that references it. So we're just going to transfer that here. So hit OK, just hit apply. So whatever this is, it'll always equal that. And then we're going to add one more parameter, another shared parameter. We're going to call this one part number. So that way the reference name is the same. We're going to hit identity data for this one, so it's just more organized. It's not going to be, it's not going to be an instance, it's going to be a type. So we're going to hit OK. So part number, we'll just name this, this is pretty important, because when we actually transfer this to the project and we want to schedule it, we're going to want to call it out as the actual cut size that we create. And in order to do this, we have to use combined parameters in our scheduling. And in order for it to get to work properly, we have to have our part number set up as though it's going to say, 24-inch by 36-inch plywood dash 3/4 inch ply. So we're going to just type in here, we're going to call 3/4 inch, sorry, this is half inch, so we're going to do dash half inch plywood. Well, you know what, for fun we'll just do FR for fire rated. And then the description, we're going to do the same thing, half inch plywood FR, or we'll do one hour. If actually you wouldn't get a 1 hour fire rating in that, we'll just do fire rating. Getting too technical here. And then we're actually going to change this to backing. Plywood backing. Just so that way it's not the same. I realize that's kind of redundant to have it that way, so we'll just have this as plywood backing. And that's basically it. So what we're going to do now is just hit, we're going to just do the same thing for 3/4. So change the part number to plywood backing. We're going to add the description, so 3/4 inch plywood, fire rated. You know what, we'll create two. We'll create another one. We'll call it 3/4 inch fire rated plywood. Okay. And we'll just go back to this one and we'll just take the FR off. Apply. Okay. So we'll just flex this real quick just to make sure that everything's working properly. Oops. Just grab this and drag it. Yeah, so it looks like it works, no errors. It's good. Change the height to 10 feet. Good, looks good. So we'll just change these back real quick. We'll make that 8 feet again. Oops. We'll make this. Oops. just going to save as family, and we're just going to save this as plywood backing. Options, that's fine, 3 is fine, save. And now we're just going to load this and close into this project. So you can see when you bring it in, it's going to try and stick to a face. Thankfully, it uses it also uses reference planes as faces as well. If you have never used a face-based family before, you're going to have place on vertical face, place on face, and then place on work plane. So if you wanted to just stick it on a work plane, we're on level 1 right now, so it's going to try and stick it to the floor. If you wanted it to stick to if you wanted it to stick to the wall here, you would just use vertical face, won't stick to the floor, but it'll still stick to the wall. It'll if you hit place on face, it'll only stick to the face of the level that you're looking at, so it won't place it vertically if you have place on face. And that is reversed if you're looking in a section, so I'll show you what I mean. So I'm going to go to level 2 again. I'm going to go back to here, and then I'm going to go to component, my 1/2 inch plywood. See, place on face, it's going to stick to the face, it's not going to stick to the floor. So we're going to add this onto the stud, or the face of the stud. And we're just going to edit this a little bit. It would probably be center of this stud here. So we're going to try and lock it. You know what? We won't lock it because we might want to move it later. So we're just going to bring it to these two here. And that's about it. So we just have to do what we did before. So we go into the assembly by double clicking onto it. We go add, then we add the plywood in, hit finish, and there you go. Add it in. So this will update obviously everything in your assembly here for your prefab wall assembly. So if we go to the left side, you can see it's in there. Just being a piece of plywood. We'll go to parts and you'll see that it added it in here. So we're going to edit this schedule a little bit just so that way I can show you what these combined parameters are like. So we're going to go to edit the fields. We're just going to empty it except for count. We're going to add cut length, description. What else we got in here? Part number. We'll add mark. Level, sure. I think that's probably a good amount. So then we're going to go to filter. Don't need that. We're going to filter by mark first because we want them to be in order of part number. Then we're going to go to sort by part number, and then we're going to sort by cut length. Again, we're going to take off itemize every instance because we want it to collapse all the sizes that are the same together, and we're going to hit OK. So at your first view of this, you're going to notice that there's a couple things that are weird here. So the description, first of all, is only at 1/2 inch plywood. The cut length is only referencing one cut length. So I'm going to show you how to fix that so that way it shows 4 foot by whatever, and when it has its description it's going to say 4 foot by whatever 1/2 inch plywood. So we're going to go to sorting and grouping. Sorry, we're going to go to formatting. Actually, I apologize again. We're going to go here, we're going to use this tool right here and combine parameters. So Combine parameters lets you take a bunch of different parameters and squish them into one and make a line out of it. So for instance, if we wanted to create create another description, and then we would add, so it would be cut length, where is it here? I just realized that we have to add something to our plywood here. So we're gonna hit OK. OK. So we have our 4 foot by 4 foot dash. So we're missing that little piece of information. So what we're missing here is we're going to go back to our left view here. We're going to go back into here, and we're going to double click this and go back into the family editor. So what we're actually missing, so we have cut length. We have cut length here, but we don't have cut height, unfortunately, or plate width. So what we have to do is we have to go into our parameters here. We have to go to edit parameter, oops, add parameter, shared, select. We're going to edit this parameter group. We're going to add a new parameter. We're going to call it cut width. And this is only going to be realistically used for this family type. But if you have some sort of other plate, like galvanized plate or something, you might have it here as well. So we have cut width. Hit OK. Hit cut width. Instance. Okay. So that went through. So we're just going to do the same thing. Plate width. That worked. Play. Okay. And then we're going to load and close. Yes, we want to save changes. We'll replace it. Yes. Back in. Write existing values. It may reset your plywood. Oh, it did. Okay, that's good. Finish, and then we're going to go back to our parts list down here. We're going to go to fields, description, and edit it. So once you create this, it's easily editable. We should see cut width here now. So we can add this in, and we're going to move it up one. So it's underneath. So we want it to say cut length by width, and then the description. So let's say, for instance, we have a stud. We don't want the cut length to have an X there if there's no width, but we want it to show there if it is a width. So the prefixes, suffixes, and separators, these are all based on the parameter that you place them with. So we want to put the X here, so that way if there's no width, it won't show the X, if that makes sense. So we're going to hit OK. We're going to hit OK, and there you go. So you got 4 foot by 3 foot 10, 15/16 half-inch plywood. So we're going to use a lot of these different items here. We're going to create a template so that way you don't have to do this for every single prefab family, and I'm going to show you how to do that as well. And then I guess we'll create some actual drawings from this. So we'll have this drawing all dimensioned, and then we'll have the parts number here and everything. So like and subscribe. If you have any comments on this or anything else you'd like to add or see, let me know and I'll add it in. Thanks.